Welcome to the Explainer. We are diving straight into a totally wild, tech-driven approach to taking down humanity's oldest, most stubborn enemy, mosquito-borne diseases. It is this fascinating intersection of public health and biology, and it is literally changing the landscape of disease control.
So think about this paradox for a second. If I asked you how we fight the deadliest animal on the planet, which, by the way, is the mosquito just because of the sheer volume of diseases they transmit, what's your first instinct? Probably eradication, right? Spraying, swatting, just getting rid of them. But what if the answer wasn't fewer mosquitoes?
Yep, you heard that right. The actual scientifically backed solution they're rolling out involves intentionally releasing hundreds of thousands of lab-grown mosquitoes straight into our own neighborhoods. I know, it sounds completely backwards, doesn't it?
Part 1, the threat, expanding mosquito habitats. Here's the deal. Thanks to climate change, the habitats for these dangerous invasive mosquitoes, like the Aedes aegypti, are expanding fast. It's putting crowded urban areas at a much higher risk for devastating diseases like dengue, Zika, and yellow fever. Now, our old school response has always been toxic chemical pesticides, but those come with a whole host of environmental risks, and honestly, the bugs are building resistance anyway. So enter the incompatible insect technique, or IIT. It's a highly targeted biological alternative that totally ditches the chemicals.
Part 2. The science, a biological Trojan horse. Okay, so here is the secret weapon. It's called Wolbachia. It's a naturally occurring bacterium that's actually already found in roughly half of all insect species out there. It's just not naturally found in the Aedes aegypti mosquito. But scientists, being brilliant, figured out that if they intentionally introduce this bacterium into male mosquitoes in a lab, well, it essentially acts as biological birth control. So here's where it gets really clever. We take these Wolbachia-infected males and release them into the wild. And the absolute genius part of this, male mosquitoes do not bite humans. Only the females are out for your blood. So these lab-reared males just safely buzz around our neighborhoods looking for wild females to mate with. And when they do, the Wolbachia bacteria basically breaks the reproductive process. The wild female goes around laying eggs, but those eggs are completely 100% unhatchable.
Scientists call this process cytoplasmic incompatibility. It basically boils down to a 4-step cycle. Step 1, you rear millions of these infected males. Step 2, release them to go do their thing with the wild females. Step 3, that incompatible mating occurs. And step 4, the offspring are unviable, meaning the local pest population just absolutely plummets.
Part 3. The proof. Real-world success stories. Now, the theory is cool, but the real-world data is where this gets truly mind-blowing. Check out these massive suppression rates from a project called Debug, run by Alphabet's Verily. In their field trials, they hit an astounding 95% suppression of Aedes aegypti in places like Fresno, California. 95%. In the Tampines neighborhood of Singapore, they hit 90, and down in Innisfail, Australia, they saw an 80% drop. We're talking about the near-total localized eradication of a major disease-carrying pest.
And the so what of all this is directly measurable in human health. Take Singapore, for instance. It's a region that is highly prone to dengue fever. Well, their National Environment Agency reported a staggering 66% decrease in dengue cases entering the 2026 peak season compared to the previous year. That is a massive real-world impact.
Singapore's initiative, known as Project Wolbachia, really proves that this strategy is a spectacular line of defense, especially for vulnerable, densely populated urban areas. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. It lowers the risk of getting dengue about over 70% right at the release sites. And it even creates a buffer, lowering risk by 45% in adjacent areas. Combine that with everyday community vigilance, and this tech actually helps Singapore achieve its lowest annual dengue case total since 2018. Part 4. The safeguards, environmental safety and regulation. Now, naturally, if you tell people you're releasing mass amounts of modified organisms into their backyard, it's going to raise some valid skepticism. But in the US, at least, this is incredibly heavily regulated. Back in late 2023, the EPA actually granted nationwide expansion for a biopesticide called ZAP males. They noted that these novel, non-chemical approaches aren't just cool science experiments. They are absolutely critical for protecting public health in overburdened communities. But listen, that approval is definitely not a blank check. The EPA demands some seriously intense oversight. For example, manufacturers have to prove their sorting technology is practically flawless, allowing a maximum of just one female for every 250,000 males. One.
They also have to do monthly environmental monitoring across every single climate zone, and there's a mandatory 30-day reporting window if any infected females are detected in the wild. Plus, the whole registration has a hard expiration date set for December 31, 2028. Why? To force a mandatory safety reevaluation.
And this is really important. Before giving the green light, the EPA did a massive, thorough assessment. They concluded that this highly targeted method results in negligible exposure to humans, and, crucially, it does not harm non-target organisms. In fact, they issued a strict no-effect determination for federally endangered or threatened species. Because this Wolbachia incompatible mating targets one specific pest, it literally leaves the rest of the ecosystem, like helpful pollinators and native predators, completely untouched.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, the unbelievable success of this technique leaves us with a pretty profound question. Researchers are already looking into how we might apply similar biological controls to invasive agricultural pests, the ones that absolutely devastate global food supplies. Think about it. If we can safely conquer the deadliest animal on Earth using a microscopic, naturally occurring bacterium, what massive global threat could we dismantle next?